Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is Andy Curry, your host. Today, I'm excited because I have with me Richard Bryan. Richard is originally from the UK and has been in the US for approximately 5 years. And I just found out a little bit ago he lives an hour away from me, and I thought that was interesting. So currently, he is a fellow Coloradoan. Richard has been speaking professionally for 5 years, and the content he speaks on is about leadership and succession planning, which we'll talk about here shortly. Richard speaks in the US and the UK. He has written 2 books, and he has one in the works. And Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. Nice to be here.
Great to have you here. Now, did I miss anything on the introduction?
No, I think that sort of covers it, other than just for background purposes. I was 4th generation in a family business, a 100-year-old family business, which was a turnaround. So that's where a lot of my material comes from. It's based on a real-life experience.
4th generation business, you said?
Correct.
That's fantastic. That's a long time. Now, you had mentioned earlier, if you don't mind me having you talk about that a little bit, you also have a commercial real estate business back in the UK, correct?
Yes, so we were actually car and truck dealers for various franchises from 1913 till 2008, and then in 2008 we changed the business model. We went from selling cars and trucks to real estate. So we do commercial real estate investment and development. So still a family business, over 100 years old, and based in the UK.
And you had made a comment prior to us starting the interview that you've got a really good team back there, so you can. That's what allows you to be here to do this, correct? Correct.
I mean, I go back 4 or 5 times a year, but technology is very helpful. We use Skype and email and all that to stay in touch. But I do have a fantastic team, so that's kind of what I talk about: is how to put a great team together.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about that here in a second, but us silly Americans, I'm sure there's some people that are wondering, how do you like the U.S. as opposed to the UK? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I love it. I was celebrating, if that's the right word, 4th of July, and, have mixed emotions for a Brit to be celebrating that. But
I understand that.
My wife and kids are all U.S. citizens, and I'm looking at becoming a U.S. citizen myself. So we love it. We actually love living here, so it's great.
Good. Okay. Well, Richard, tell us about your speaking business, the types of groups you speak to, and what goes on when you do that.
Yeah, so I just so you know, I never really intended to become a speaker. But I was asked to speak at a family business conference and share my sort of story really as a case study. And I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the sort of Q&A and the feedback afterwards. And so from there, I joined the National Speakers Association in Colorado, and Colorado has one of the biggest chapters in the country, which I knew nothing about at the time. But there's over 150 professional speakers, trainers, and authors who speak, who meet regularly, and that was a fantastic thing for me to join that organization and really help me learn about the world of professional speaking and communicating. And it dovetails very nicely with my other business in the UK. So I'm master of my own calendar, which was also very attractive.
Definitely. And so you got started speaking at an event where they just wanted to do a case study. You got hooked on that. And then how long did it take you to sort of develop into your own business doing that?
Well, and then I did a lot of speaking locally for, Rotary and service organizations, and developing my material really, so that I think it takes you a couple of years to figure out. You think you might speak about one thing, but it takes you a couple of years to figure out what people are actually really want to hear, and the more to the point, what they're prepared to pay to hear you speak about. And for me, it was two things. One was how to build a high-performing team in your business so that you can work on the business, not in the business. If you're the owner, you're not having to work 100 hours a week. And the second thing was really has come about in the last year or so is succession planning. Huge challenge around succession planning, and largely for family businesses, but not exclusively. You know, there could be succession planning issues in any business as your management team matures and you want to bring new people through.
Okay, and for listeners who are not quite connecting with succession planning, as an example, a family business, the father is getting ready to retire. Who's going to do it next? Is that the son, the daughter? How do you plan for that? Make sure who's in charge and all that. Would that be correct?
Correct. And there's lots of variables in there. And typically, my experience is that people don't plan far enough ahead. And my own personal story was I became CEO of quite a large business at the age of 28 when I had neither the experience or credibility, quite honestly. And I was, I think, smart enough to recognize that and surround myself with some great people that did have that experience and that credibility, and learn a lot through them. But it was a difficult situation to walk into. My father was sick and retired very quickly, and I was sort of thrust in there. And so I say to people, the number one rule with any succession planning is plan ahead.
Now, are you an only child?
No, I have a sister.
Is she younger than you?
She's actually older, but she had already got married and had 4 kids, and was traveling the world with her husband, who was an officer in the British Army.
Okay, so she, of course, wasn't going to step in there, and it was thrust upon you. And I've had a similar experience. I opted to be the manager of one of my father's stores when I really didn't. I mean, I had a pretty good background, but as far as managing people and such, I didn't have that acumen either. So what were the adversities you experienced with that? How did you overcome some of them?
Well, I think one of the most difficult things is, we're a long established family business, and we had people that had worked there for 30 years, and they'd seen me as a kid, and suddenly I was there as the boss telling them what to do. And so you have to really earn their respect, and that comes just through hard work, and you make a lot of mistakes along the way. And unfortunately, at 28, without much of a track record behind you, you sort of learn on the job, which is not the greatest thing to do. And as I said, I was fortunate that I managed to get some very good mentors around me, and particularly a guy called Frank, who I wrote a book about called Being Frank. And everything I learned from him, really, he was, I think without his help, I would have really don't think I would have survived in that role. And when I joined the business, we were losing the equivalent of about $3.5 million a year as well. So to say it was a challenge would be an understatement.
Wow. A lot of pressure for a young one.
Yeah. And newly married with young children. So it was a challenging time. Let's put it like that.
But when you look back on something like that, at the time you're just scared. You're, as they say, freaking out. But the growth you get out of that when you look back is there was a lot of growth, I'm sure, wasn't there?
Well, there's you're in a difficult situation, but there's a lot of opportunities as well to really learn a lot of things very quickly. But I think you really do need to have some good mentors and some good people around you to help you on that journey. You
do. Now, as far as the public speaking you've done, what event sticks out in your mind the most where you really felt like you made an impact on the audience?
What event sticks out the most? I've had some really fun events, actually, and but I think probably the one that that made the biggest impact was my first conference, if you like, was a independent insurance conference here in Colorado, and I just really felt there was such a great connection with the audience, because they were all business owners or senior managers in privately held businesses, and I just came away from that thinking, wow, that was really a lot of fun, because I know that what I've shared with them is going to make a difference. And I've had feedback since from various people saying, how much they were able to apply some of the things we talked about. And that really was a great feeling. So that one stands out as being really the moment that I thought, I enjoy this speaking thing and I could do more of it.
When you do it, is it what kind of time frame do you speak in? A couple hours? What's normal for you?
Well, a keynote typically is between an hour and an hour and a half, and you're either opening or closing an event normally, because the job of the keynoter is to sort of open people up emotionally for change, to make change. And you're giving them, my keynotes are always pretty interactive anyway, so have people doing stuff and working on their own plan so that they walk out with at least 2 or 3 things that they can apply immediately. But and then I'll do half-day workshops as well, which are typically 3 hours.
Now, when you say open them up emotionally, which would be a key to really keeping their attention while you're talking, would that be correct?
Yeah, and it's all about the stories, really. If you see a speaker who's really, very good at their craft and has been doing it a long time, they typically, the thing that makes a difference between those that are successful and have impact and really make a positive difference with the audience is that they illustrate points through stories, and they can be personal stories or they can be stories about someone else, but they, and a lot of time I use a lot of humor in my stories. A lot of it is self-deprecating because it breaks down the barriers that way. And I'll start off with a short story that is, at my expense as the idiot son joining the business. And I think that's great because people don't want to go and have someone say, well, then I did this and then I did that. And, it's great to talk about your successes, but actually, the old thing about you learn more through your failures, that's certainly been my experience.
Well, plus it humanizes you that, you're not, the audience doesn't think you're walking around on water,
Correct.
So
I'm just a regular guy who was thrust into this position at 28, and it was sink or swim, quite honestly. And, as I said, I was lucky that I went out and found people like Frank, and they helped me, and I learned a huge amount in a short period of time, and really that's what I'm sharing with people is some of what I would call the fundamentals.
Now, is Frank still alive?
He is, yes. Yeah, I saw him in London recently, so he's on great form. He's in his 70s now, but he's very active and still active in the business community. He's an amazing man. He's ex-Special Forces with a fine arts degree, so he's an unusual man.
Well, it sure sounds like it. And now, let's see. You said you wrote that book, and you wrote another one. What's it called?
It's called It's a Zoo Around Here, which I wrote with a guy called Nigel Risner, and that's about communicating with different personality types. Okay,
and then your third one, can you reveal the title yet, or do you know it yet?
Well, the title is called Succession, Taking the Lead on Handing Over the Reins. And it's due to be published in sort of October, November this year.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Richard, it's been a pleasure talking to you and giving us a peek behind the scenes of what's going on with your speaking business and the kind of things you do. That's been fascinating information. Thank you for sharing that.
Andy, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.